and welcome to another episode of the Yachting Brief, a podcast where I'm speaking to industry experts about where they've been and where they're heading now. And before I introduce our next guest, I'd like to ask you, do you think your brand is doing enough to stand out in luxury markets? And if you're not sure what that looks like or even who your audience is, feel free to give me a message at hello@studiovoyage.co.uk or message me directly and I'll see where I can help. So let's go on to the good stuff. I can welcome today someone that was my first contact, someone that I was really keen to speak to because her profile said luxury expedition specialist. So I'm now going to introduce Elise Ciappara. Elise is a seasoned yacht expedition specialist with over a decade of experience in the yachting industry. Having worked on world cruising vessels, has now found herself in an exciting role at JORO, where she curates bespoke experiences for luxury yachting clientele. With a deep understanding of guest needs and a passion for exploration, Elise crafts unique itineraries that push the boundaries of what's possible on board a super yacht. Welcome, Elise.
Thank you. That sounds so fancy when you say it.
I know. So we'll start with where you started.
I joined the yacht industry in my early mid-20s. I must have been about 24, 25 when I joined, and just as a junior stewardess. And in fact, I joined because my aunt is a yacht broker and she's based in Antigua, and she had been telling me since I was a teenager, "Oh, darling, come to yachting." And I'd always said, "No, don't tell me what to do." And it turns out she was right. You know, that's my official, this is the time I'll let her know. She was right.
This is it. You can send her this podcast and you have to admit that she was right.
She was right. She had me join her at the Antigua Yacht Show. My first experience of yachting was the Antigua Yacht Show. And I remember walking around with her, kind of working as her assistant, just to get, you know, a bit of a free holiday to Antigua, to be honest. And I came back just eyes opened. I was working in finance as a mortgage broker. I did my STCW, went out to Italy for the Genoa boat show, the MIBA show back then, got my first job. I planned on going out for a couple of seasons and coming back.
Of course, we all do.
I forgot to come home for over a decade.
But sometimes you hear like, I went and I came back 5 years later, but a decade, you've won. You've won this one.
I wasn't really intending on coming shoreside when I did come shoreside. It was very much an opportunity that I had begun to think, what's the plan for post-yachting? I knew what I didn't want to do, which for most stewardesses in interior, I think we all think the options are you think the options are limited. You think, well, I can run a hotel, run a guest house, run someone's home, or, you know, switch careers entirely. And that's not actually true. There's a lot of skills that you learn that can come through. I took a job interview with a startup expedition company as a bit of a favor to a recruitment consultant who was telling me, you'll love it. Just try. And then ended up coming back to the UK.
And she didn't stop there. And then it just kept going and going and going.
Yeah, that was 6 years ago now. I've been ashore.
So whilst you were on board, we'll start there first. What was like the biggest, you know, you create now these amazing experiences. And is there one real pinnacle of the experience whilst you were on board that you thought, how have I done that? How have I just created that? And that was like a real show-stopping moment for you?
Honestly, I think each trip, I was lucky enough to be on charter boats. I have a strong opinions about a lot of things, but I think charter is such an interesting program. Any busy charter program is really interesting because you always have clients coming to you with just crazy requests or very specific needs.
Yeah. Which we thrive off. We're weird. We're really strange and we just thrive off these mad ideas.
Yeah, and I think, you know, in some ways we're the authors of our own destruction because yacht crew keep meeting these challenges all the time. A couple of things that stand out in memory now would be being up in Greenland on a shakedown cruise. I worked on Cloudbreak. And we did the build on Cloudbreak and the Arctic season there, and serving dinners on top of glaciers in these just incredible settings was probably one of the iconic moments of. There was a lot of back and forth using the helicopters getting up and down there to do this, essentially just a lovely lunch.
You think about a beach picnic being the worst thing, and then when they're like, okay, we're doing a glacial dinner, you're like, okay, let's make sure everything is in that box.
When we were setting the boat up during the build, we were focused because you obviously that's when you're designing your beach setup and doing everything. We knew we were going to be doing a lot of heli ski. That's what the boss was really into. And so we were working on, how do we keep these tents warm?
Yeah.
All that kind of thing. So I think that really stood me in good stead when I came ashore, is just to really, you've got to think in very small practical steps for these sorts of things. And then similarly, Belize, swimming with whale sharks with the guests. And again, I was with an owner at that point years before that even. And we were cruising Belize, and he'd been snorkeling and all the whale sharks came, and he made every one of the crew get in the water with him, which was very kind, because otherwise you could be a bit like just watching it going, that looks nice.
That looks nice. I
But
love
that
an
was
owner
pretty
when they get
magic.
involved
Yeah.
like that, and they just appreciate their crew so much. I've been on a month-long charter with one guest, and they're like, "Why aren't you swimming? Why aren't you doing this?" And everyone's like, "Why would I
Quite
swim?"
a lot to do, actually.
Yeah, you've actually just requested a 21-man dinner, but no problem.
Yeah, I'll come swimming with you. Fine. Yeah, exactly.
It's so funny, isn't it? And in the world of charter, there's like a competition between each boat, almost like not spoken about, but you want to up each other, and we're almost doing each other a disservice, because when someone does it next level, you're like, here we go, we've got to do it the next level.
Yeah, and I remember being anchored close to my cousin who was on board a bigger boat. We were both chief stews at the time, and we had more jet skis. We were a smaller boat, but we had more jet skis. And she messaged me going, "You've got me in trouble. Like, we've got to go and buy new more jet skis now and find out where they're going to go."
It's so funny, isn't it? What anyways, because as well, you end up in ports, and then these are like people you follow around, because you obviously do the med run and like the milk run, as you call it, and then you end up in Antigua, and it's the same boats doing the same itinerary, and it's just so I miss that part of it, because you end
Yeah.
up rocking up, seeing what boats were there, who's on it now, who's moved on. It's so good.
I remember once pulling up, docking in the Seychelles in Eden Marina, and I'd just joined the boat. We'd just done the crossing from the shipyard, doing the fenders, like all excited. We're in the Seychelles, and I look across at the one other boat in the marina, and looking at me right in the eyes is my cabin mate from 2 seasons ago. In fact, who'd been in Belize with me.
That's so good. And of course, you have no time to catch up, because you're basically turning the boat around to go again. But it's nice that you saw them in a lovely place.
It's a floating village, and it is really lovely. That kind of, I think there's only people who've done it really understand that kind of level of, just taking opportunities when they come, and to see, like, you might only have one night in that place, and you make the effort to actually see people, and you go through. I find a lot of times, like ashore, someone lives down the road, you can see them anytime. So you can be a bit complacent.
No, I completely agree. The amount of times you'd be like on a 1-day turnaround, but somehow you still manage to get in a couple of drinks at a bar down the road, and then you're back on board and starting at 6 a.m. I don't know how I did it. I always have the saying of, I've done more on less sleep. That's what keeps me going. I'm like, okay, it's a tough day, but I've done way more on less sleep.
My friend recently had a baby, and she said the best prep she ever had was doing yachting for 10 years before she had a child. I was like, yeah, it's fine.
I can do anything because I've done this. Yeah. So now we've got like the lovely nostalgia out the way. We'll talk about like where you are now and kind of how you've ended up in this role. Obviously, you said it was accidental. You just ended up shoreside. So describe a little bit about how you got into these shoreside roles, and what are you up to? Tell me.
It's it's a niche within a niche within a niche, really. There's like yacht expedition specialist kind of situation. So I joined a different company to JORO originally. I was there for 5 years as head of yacht expeditions, and as I said, it was a startup, Polaris, and we did some extraordinary trips while I was there. And it was really very much seeing a need for these boats that go off the beaten track, out of the milk run, with the milk run being, for those who don't know, Med Caribbean. So anywhere apart from there, really, is where I specialize, because you can't add, I've had clients come to me now and saying, I want your help in Amalfi. And I'm like, well, I absolutely can, but I don't value. And most captains and crews, they know that if they're milk run captains and crews, they know these areas. There's an awful lot of support in those places. So, I'm more than happy to be involved, especially if there's an event or a specific type of requirement. I've had mermaids swimming up to the back of the boat to teach little girls mermaid lessons in the pool, do a photo shoot, that kind of really, really fun things. But that's quite individual. Where I specialize is anywhere else, from Norway, the Arctic, Antarctic, Central America. I'm seeing a lot of Pacific at the moment. And then I've moved over to JORO. I've been with them just over a year. And at JORO, we're even more bespoke. There's no such thing as an off-the-shelf itinerary with a yacht expedition. Every boat is different. The guests' needs are different. The capabilities are different. And the place, everything is down to a lot of shifting waters, if you like. So it's really putting things together and maximizing the guest's time, whether that guest is the owner or a charter guest. It doesn't, for us, it's kind of the same in that our clients they're time poor. Everyone works hard for a living. Everyone is creating all this extraordinary wealth and extraordinary opportunity. And yachts really can go places that no one else can. And we can be right in the wilderness. There's something incredibly magical about that. That feeling of being at sea where there's nothing between you and the horizon. And when you step on shore and there's still nothing, that's incredible.
That sounds nice.
But how do we then make sure that the experience is there? The support isn't always there. It's getting better in certain places. Costa Rica is a prime example of somewhere that wasn't really on the map a few years ago and is now a really popular yachting destination. So there's more support for captains and crew. But yeah, it's grown, but kind of organically.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the guests, people are getting younger. Most of our clients now are families, multi-generational. So then you end up doing 2 or 3 different types of experience every day and bringing people back. Maybe the kids are going off hiking all day, but the grandparents don't want to do that. So they're doing some like cultural experiences. And then we're bringing them to where the hikers are having lunch so we can...
A logistical nightmare.
Yeah. Imagine like a big murder board with a lot of red string and like, right, they're doing this, we're doing this.
And just then, you in the middle, like...
Yeah. And then, of course, you get there and the weather doesn't play and all the plans change every single day. So it's building all those things in and being aware that this is all going to change as soon as the guests get on board, as soon as something happens. If we're cruising down, down the coast of Norway and a big pod of orcas is all around the boat, we're not going to go off and hike. We're going to hang out with the orcas.
Yeah.
We're going to do this really cool thing. So we just really need to, it's about being flexible, but it's that mindset that I learned yachting of just like, right, get it done, do this.
Definitely.
But it's also being really creative with what is possible.
Yeah, you summed something up there, and I thought that was really important about, yes, you absolutely could take the Med by storm if that's what you were working, if that's the space you were doing. But it's about understanding the audience that you're working with right now to better their experience and add value. And I think that's something that I'm definitely trying to demonstrate in the space of yachting, the importance of understanding the vessel you're on, who the clients are, because, I also speak to stewardesses about this. And when they go to work, I'm like, well, what kind of boat do you want to go and work on yourself? Like, do you want to be on a boat that's a party boat? Do you want to be on a boat that's like a bit of an older crew that's quite sporty? Do you want to be on it? Every boat has their theme, and whether they like it or not, it's there. You know it. So why is that no different for the guest that's coming on board, and why don't we lean more into that?
Yeah, I think I say a lot to clients, like when we're not brokers, so we work with brokers. We have a partnership with Burgess so I work a lot with them. But when a charter guest is looking at vessel options, and when you're looking off the beaten track, the vessel options are much more limited than in the Med of the Caribbean, when there's which for the charter boat, for the boat itself, great. They've got a kind of captive audience of adventurous people. But I'll always say to them, like, every boat is one person's dream. And if that's not your dream, that's fine. We can find another one, but it might take us a bit longer. Maybe we're not going this season. Maybe we're going next. It just depends on what's happening. But it's really interesting. And when we work with private boats, we spend a lot of time working out how to make that boat shine. A yacht is still an incredible experience just by itself. That's why the Med and the Caribbean, although I tend to think they're a bit oversaturated, are still iconic. They're iconic yachting destinations. Yachting is iconic by itself. And every boat is very special in its own way. So how can we really maximize that without being a burden to the crew? Because the last thing we ever want to do is walk on board and go, wow, we think we should go and do this and be in charge. We're not. We're part of the team with the captain. We are not guests. We are there to serve the guests, and we are there to create these experiences ashore or in the water or whatever, but as a team. So it's important that we understand what that boat is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's crucial. And it's like you say, in these markets that are oversaturated, it's about a boat knowing, who they're trying to target out.
Yeah.
What is it, the experience that they can bring? You know, you're offering such niche experiences, but you're doing it properly. You know, you're not trying to just fit somebody into a mold of a vessel. Like you're almost fitting the boat around the person and be like, okay, like what can we do for you? Where can we go for you? And I think that's something that I think will have to change as, you know, new builds become ever increasing. There's a more need for, you know, people to now, a younger audience as well is definitely coming on board. I think I've read articles about the age that people are now chartering is decreasing because obviously they have more accessibility. And it's like, how do you go to compete in these markets? And then there's people like JORO doing these experiences that are so wildly out there and just so looked after. It's like that's peak. Like that's almost like the new level of yachting.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the questions I ask clients, you know, if they come to me, they rarely come with a fully formed idea. They rarely know exactly where they want. They often will have dates, and that's it. You know, or they have like the initial idea and dates, and they probably won't work with each other. You know, where like
yes,
you know, that's not actually the best time to be in that place. But you know, why do they want to go to that place? What's the image they have in their head of Greenland? What's the image they have in their head of Fiji? Fiji's a bad example. It's great all the time. I love Fiji. But you know, why do they want to go there? What have they just been told about by somebody? How have they heard? We're seeing a lot this year of interest suddenly in Scotland, which is such a fun destination. We can do some incredibly cool stuff all along in the Hebrides and ashore, and it works really well as a dual kind of shore-based and yacht adventure. But I don't know what's been out in the media somewhere to make this a sudden interest from people. But yeah, it's about what's the image. So I was talking to someone and he had the image of the Highlands and the moorlands and everything else. But when he wants to go, it's actually going to be because of his family, it's going to be quite a tricky time to be in Scotland. So we've sent him some ideas for other places with similar kind of landscapes, with similar opportunities for what he wants to do, but he may not have considered it because he doesn't know it's possible.
Yeah. You're just opening that door to every single possibility and then kind of wishing you didn't open it as wide.
Yeah, my personal bucket list is out of control. There's a lot of things that I wish I didn't know about.
Yeah, it's like the best kept secret. And you just said, so when you go on board as well, you go on board as part of the crew. Now, how many people will go on from your team? Is it just yourself or is there other members?
It depends on what's appropriate. So in some places, we don't need to be on the boat. We don't need to be there at all. It's one of a great heartbreak for me is Papua New Guinea. We have some incredible land-based assistants there who are anthropologists who've lived in the jungle with the tribes for years and years and years. They probably don't need me there, which is just heartbreaking to say that. But when it becomes more logistically complex, when we are looking at having different assets, whether it's submersibles, helicopters, guides, specialists, and things like that, it can be very helpful to have a host. And we call it a host more than an expedition leader because it kind of covers everything. And it might just be one person organizing, just again with that murder board kind of thing on the bridge going through. Whereas an Antarctic expedition, for example, you'll need an ice pilot, you'll need an expedition leader, an assistant expedition leader, maybe a host as well. Do you want a photographer? Like it can go up and up and up, but it's really about what is suitable for the client, what's appropriate, and also what is the space on. If we're chartering a support vessel, we'll fill it full of people if that's what's needed.
Bring me with you, please. Thank you. If you need to fill it, I'm on my way.
You know, we've got one of our team is an illustrator. She we create a lot of bespoke things for every trip, like a beautifully illustrated. She's done wildlife spotting guides for the Galapagos for the kids and different things like that. So, I mean, we've got a plan that one day we're going to have a client who wants her to come on board the whole time and create a beautiful painting of the trip. You know, like
that's the thing for me. Like that is something that you cannot offer anywhere else, and it should be like that. I think I wrote in a LinkedIn post about gift giving. Whilst I was on board, if I saw another guest get handed a USB stick, I was going to throw it overboard. I was done with it.
And
So
no one ever does anything with
yeah,
this. We have clients that go away with photographers, and we'll give them like the rough edit of the movie or whatever on the
yeah,
last night, which a lot of boats do. But then we have our team, and like the illustrators, we've got our brand designers, we've got a team of people who will then create the photo books and
yeah,
albums with their badge logo. And we have clients with shelves of them, of
yeah.
their JORO trips, and they actually then you actually look at it like that's always such a shame with digital stuff is that we've all got hundreds of images on our phones. When do you actually look at them?
Yeah. And it's going into that level of personalization. You know, for instance, you have a guest that journals every day.
We'll give them a gem.
Give them a journal. Find them something beautiful. Go
Mm.
and collaborate with, you have for instance, add another layer to that. That guest knows, brands really, really well. He's dressed very well. Go and collaborate with a brand author. Go and,
Yeah.
it's so this is the part where my brain used to go crackers whilst I was on board because I had this background of, luxury beforehand. And then I came into it from a design perspective. And then I was constantly wanting to, and it's time. Essentially, it's time. Nobody on board has the time. So if you're an external person like yourself or, from an outsider, I would have loved that to have just been
Oh yeah, we're talking at the
just,
moment with someone who's very passionate about various conservation projects, but just doesn't think there's been a documentary worthy of it yet.
oh, I
So we're
like that.
currently talking about bringing him, like he's meeting with documentary filmmakers to then choose who he wants to work with. He's going to be part of the process. He's going to be filming, and again, if we can be teaching someone a skill during the trip. We've taught people to sail over the course of like 6 or 7 trips, and now they're sailing their own yacht.
I like that.
There's so many ways to really enrich these trips, and
Good
it is
word. Good
knowing that
word. I like that.
and knowing what's really special. And yeah, we spend a lot of time on gifting and client gifting and making sure. And at JORO we operate almost entirely on repeat and referral. We don't do a huge amount of outreach or see, clients come, it's fine, and we're quite strict on what we actually do because again, if we're not going to add value, we're happy to talk about it, happy to
Yeah.
advise, but it's not the trip to be working on us. It's really about long term. But it does mean you have to get more and more creative each year with what,
Yeah.
you can't just be
Pushing the
giving someone the
boundaries.
same things every day. The number of water bottles I see, I'm like,
Too many. It's done.
luggage tags and water bottles just kill me.
Caps.
Caps, I don't mind a
How do
cap.
you feel about a cap?
I do quite like a boat cap
Okay.
because you've got the boat merchandising, and that I prefer that to a boat t-shirt,
Okay. Interesting.
but it's not something we would give. So
Absolutely. That's the thing. You just understand. I'm really. This is such a good conversation for me. I'm like, yes, you understand the importance of your brand and what it's putting out. That's ultimately what you're saying, and that is such. I just think it's so valuable. You're one level up from a t-shirt, a water bottle, or a cap. That's where
yeah,
I feel. I think so. Why is it that these ultra high net worths, the people that are coming to you, that even are like 1% of the 1%, what is it about them that's, finding JORO through the referrals and then not just going anywhere else? What is it about JORO the
um,
energy that it's giving off, or, what is it?
we're a small team, so they get to know us quite well as well. There's 15 of us in the company now, and we take a lot of time to get to know them. Like the first trip is always really interesting. It's a bit like those first few days of a charter when you're kind of going, oh my God. And then by the second or third day, when Madame needs her coffee in the afternoon or she's going to get a bit
Yes.
snippy, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
You know when to switch from juice to wine.
The notes start forming on the fridge or in the
Yeah,
group chat. Yeah.
exactly. And it's quite similar to that. We don't do very many last minute trips. When you're operating off the beaten track, again, I touched on it earlier with like vessel availability and also, for shore based, it's availability in these super beautiful places is limited. One of a safari camp in Kenya that we work with a lot tends to book up 12 to 18 months in advance. You have to think farther ahead for all of these off the beaten track trips, or for these very special trips. You have to, if you want it to be the level that we're doing. So you do have time to get to know the client. And it's really interesting working with brokers because the questions we ask are very different to the questions they ask.
Yeah.
You know,
And have you got an example of that, Elise?
the one I often use is when did you last feel at peace? So for me, one of the only places I've ever understood the concept of meditation was in Antarctica. standing on the edge of a beach, waiting for guests who were predictably late, standing on the edge of a beach. I had all their gear ready, penguins honking all around me, snow falling down, just nothing. And there was nothing in my brain. I didn't even notice that they were about 40 minutes to an hour later. And I'd been standing there just peaceful. But I think, again, in this day and age, everyone's so bombarded. Everyone's available all the time. We have Starlink. We have everything's on our phones, on the tiny screen. If you're not on the middle screen, you're on the little screen. Sometimes you treat yourself with the big screen. So if we can create that moment for someone, it's very rare someone can answer that, especially like a busy parent who's now planning this big holiday for their family or their friends or a celebration. If we can just take some of that away from it, and ultimately we curate joy. That's what we're doing. We're creating these really special moments of togetherness, and sharing those memories with people, and that's so special. That's what gives me the chills, seeing this potentially quite jaded ultra high net worth person coming out of the water having just encountered manta rays or something like in Indonesia. It's really special to have been able to create that for them.
I like that. You read that like a child's storybook. Like, I felt so warm in that moment when you were telling me. And I remember when you told me about the penguins the first time, but the second time, I felt like it hit far deeper.
My little penguin tattoo.
Hello, little penguin. For those listening, we have a little tattoo of a penguin as well for a little memento. I think there's times where, I say it every episode, I've been really lucky with the guests I've ever worked on. I always worked on very busy charter. And one of the last ones I did, I unfortunately lost my granddad during the trip, and, people were aware of that happening. And the last thing I wanted was those guests to know. Like, absolutely, that is rule 101 for me. Those guests are not to know. No. And I had laid, I was on mornings, I laid the table, I did it every single time, every day. This was a month-long trip, and this guest got up half an hour earlier than I thought he would, and I'm there I was sobbing. I was literally trying to get this table sorted, setting everything up ready for his coffee, because I knew exactly what he had in the morning. And he came up and he said, "Oh my goodness, what's wrong?" And I was like, "This is the worst day of my career. What have I done?" And I said, "I'm so sorry. This should not be happening." Well, anyway, he said, "Come sit with me." And I'm thinking, I can't sit with this man. I can't do this.
I can't sit on that couch. Do you know how long I've spent ironing that couch?
Honestly, and I feel like only someone in yachting would understand how devastated I was that this person had caught me off guard. Well, he was just the most kind human being I have ever met about that whole situation. And these were the people, these were very, very influential, very busy people. And anyway, I was on earlies, so I'd gone down late. Next minute, knock on my cabin door, someone come in, like, "You'll never guess what's just happened." And I said, "Why? What, am I in trouble?" Because that's your first thought.
Of course. Yeah,
what have I done? I haven't squeezed the oranges. And she said, "They've just sang a prayer for your family." And I said, "Oh my gosh." I was like, "No, they haven't." I was like, I was so embarrassed. I was so upset with myself. And then the next day I woke up and I knew this had happened. And I spoke to them. I said, "I'm so sorry that disrupted your day." And next minute, I'm being pulled out by the hand. I'm getting, literally blessed by this amazing family. They didn't need to do that. And to this day, I always think to myself, like, they are humans. And no matter what anyone says about anybody with money, these are people that came on that trip for themselves, and they still had time for others, and they're still, so emotional and just such lovely people. And, I've received wonderful charter tips. I deserve them. We worked so hard, but that is probably the most impactful thing that ever happened for me. And I remember that so solidly.
I think a lot of people have this image of like the uber wealthy being demanding and difficult, but I've been the same. I've always been really lucky in the charter clients I had during my career at sea. The people I work with for now, they're caring, and they'll invite their friends, they'll invite family, they'll invite people who are not as wealthy as them to host them, to share with them these experiences. And that's, I think the wealth has changed. And the definition of wealth has changed. I think the definition of wealth is changing to include experiences. I've heard about life balance. I've never really managed it just yet, but I've heard about it. Gen Z are telling me it's a thing. And I'm like, all right, my old millennial person here.
How does that look in, like, asking AI, how do I do this? Literally.
What does this mean? But I think that's what we really try and do, is kind of give that balance back to someone.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, there are guests that I will happily
just not encounter again, happily.
I mean, one of the things I'm very glad about is the types of trips we do attract
Yes.
these people.
Yeah.
It's very rare that I'm speaking to someone who I would profoundly disagree with on a social level.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Which is great. But no, I think definitions of changing of what is luxury.
Yeah. Okay, go into that. So what are the trends?
It's so hard. I think in the kind of, as I said, niche within a niche that I am.
Yeah. Yeah, go for it.
I think the trends at the moment, we're having a lot of talks about real philanthropy, conservation. JORO is one of the founders of the Conscious Travel Foundation. And so that works a lot with philanthropic aim goals and kind of really supporting grassroots communities around the world, teaching fishermen who used to be blast fishing to teach people to dive instead, and providing them a more lucrative means of making a living that also protects the area that they're in.
Okay.
That kind of thing is really important. But we're talking to more and more clients at the moment about how can they be leaving a good thing. They don't want to just sail in on their yacht and give candy to village children.
Yes.
They want to be doing something actually really meaningful, which is actually fantastic from a brand point of view, not just for our souls, but also for like client outreach, getting back to them and saying, hey, this project you funded last year, now it's doing this.
Clever, of course. But also
And
you want to
it's
let
not
them
about
know.
selling
Yeah.
them that. It's about engaging them with the area that they went to and really providing context.
Yeah.
And that's something JORO does very, very well, is providing context, getting locals in. We did a trip in Norway. They were in the fjord where base jumping was invented. So had the guys that
Cool.
did that base jump and do a display and then come for lunch and tell the guests all about their crazy ways that they were creating these wingsuits, and I'm naturally quite a risk-averse person. It sounds awful. I would never want to throw myself off a cliff.
The fact that they tell you how they made the suit bothers me.
Yeah. And you're like,
My
gnawing all
A-level
my
sewing
nails off even just thinking about it.
meet standard. Oh my gosh.
But I think that's what people are more interested in now. And I think as well, they want to meet locals and they don't want performative tourism.
Of course.
You
And
don't want to see.
exploitive as well.
Yeah, and that kind of, there's a lot of places in the world where, it's still growing, we're learning, but we have to be quite strict on what are we actually going to do, and is it going to actually make a difference? Are we doing this with a purpose, or are we doing it for the sake of doing it?
Yeah.
So that's, again, part of the design process for it. We call it discovery, design, and delivery, kind of 3 phases of it.
This gets me very excited. I enjoy that. It's just purely understanding who you are as a brand and who your audience is. And I just think it's so important because look at the service that you provide as a result.
Yeah.
And everyone.
I personally at JORO now, as I said, I'm working a lot with Burgess, with the partnership there. So I'm doing a lot of circumnavigation planning, a lot of long-term planning with vessels. So mainly kind of initially talking to the owner and then trying to talk to the captain as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And then working with the captain to design a long-term itinerary, building in warranty period, building in shipyard downtime for the crew. And what's quite interesting is when we're working with owners who they're private boats, where are they going when the boat is doing this passage? Maybe they want to go ashore and do something, and kind of, so you end up with a big map with the boat route going this way and the guest route, and then zipping off to somewhere else to go around. And that's fascinating, and really designing that. And for charter boats that we're working with, some of them are launching in the next couple of years, and we're already looking ahead at, okay, well, where's the first season going to be? What is this itinerary we can design to really showcase the vessel, the mission, do all this, and then the charter manager can market it correctly, because the one big thing with off the beaten track is that pre-planning. And for marketing a boat for charter, obviously we have to know where the boat's going to be. But the longer we have to plan that, the bigger we can think.
I like that.
And there really is no upper limit in yachting, which is what's so exciting.
Yeah, those goalposts just keep moving.
They don't exist.
They don't exist. Get rid of them.
I can be like, right, I want to do this.
Yeah.
And then
after the fact is we're going to agree to everything and then we're going to make it work.
Yeah, or just go, okay. It's very much, there is an element sometimes of that being told something in the dining room and walking back into the pantry and going, right, okay. There's
Yeah.
always that.
And
half
there's a
second.
stewardess in there going, what are we doing? And you're like, just give me 1 second.
1 second. I just need to, right. And I think, yeah, that's very much the kind of attitude. And yeah, it's the opportunity to be really creative.
I like that. Do you think that enough boats, whether that be through the brokerages, through the management, or, as somebody who has a good understanding of the industry, this is why I'm asking you, do you think that they're doing enough to understand their audiences or the potential of the audience, or do you think it's very much just a machine?
I think it's still in an education. It's still an education piece at the moment. I think there's more interest from owners in sending their boats further afield, but they don't quite understand everything that involves. And they, especially if they're a semi-seasoned owner, or an owner that's mainly done the milk run, they are not used to thinking further ahead than a couple of months, really.
So you think it may come down to the owner?
I think a lot comes down to the owner being willing to commit to being further away. Not just, for Antarctica, we say minimum 12 months ahead of time. You want to be looking. Legend that goes down there every year. It's the boat that's known for being in Antarctica. It's booked up a season ahead. The Antarctic season is December to end of February. It's a short season, and it is booked every year because it commits to going there ahead of time.
Yeah.
You can say to your client, yes, you can charter Legend. Whereas a lot of owners don't want to put themselves in that. They see it almost as putting themselves in a box unless they are excited to go there as well.
Yeah. And they have an understanding of it as well. I think what I found when I was on board, a lot of vessels didn't see themselves as businesses, and at the end of the day, essentially they are. Why would you treat anything differently? And with any business, you sit down and do a bit of workshopping and figure out what it is about that vessel that's important. What does it offer? What can it offer? What does it need to offer?
What makes it different? What makes it stand out?
Yeah.
And yeah, as there's more and more boats coming out, it's harder and harder to stand out. So I think that's where we are looking at getting some more vessels looking at going further afield with the political situations as they are. We talked to multiple boats about they go the long way round to the Indian Ocean now, down past Cape Town and down South Africa, which is a bit of a pain. But what that does do is open up that entire coast of Africa, the East Africa.
Yeah.
Madagascar, Mozambique, Tanzania, Kenya, incredible coastlines for cruising, incredible surfing, diving, beautiful experiences, something completely unique. My old boat Cloudbreak goes down there. It's maybe the only charter boat. If I have a client that wants to charter in Madagascar, I'm just like, okay, let me look at Cloudbreak. That's the only one.
Number one.
And it's fantastic. Like, I'm emotionally attached to that boat.
Is it a trauma bond? Is it a trauma bond? Are you bonded by a story on there that definitely changed the life you lived?
Yeah, definitely. But like it's so there's boats now like who are prepared to think about that, like, oh, okay. And it's about how can we maximize something? Everything in yachting is always inherently changing. Boats keep moving. That's, they're not like a lovely hotel. You can just learn where it is and all those things. No, it changes. If a boat wants to go to the poles, have they considered polar code training? Have they, which will bring their insurance premiums down, but it requires booking. They don't necessarily need to be ice class, but they do need to have a really good interior dining room. It can't just be the afterthought through space, which it often is in a tropical boat. It needs to be, is the interior comfortable? If you're up there and the weather's not playing, you're inside. So there is more to think about, but it's about educating, and it's really addictive. Going off the beaten track, being the first boat to be there in years and years and having everyone all excited to see it. They don't care who you are. They're just like, oh my God. There's, they don't care who the guests are. It's all about the boat. It's that kind of thing. So once guests start to experience that, they want more and more. So you often get the same guests coming back. Like if a boat is doing a circumnavigation and it's a charter boat, you get the same guests coming back to the same boat in a new place. And that's the ideal, because as a crew, you already know the guests. You know what they like.
Such a good feeling. Such a good feeling.
Good. Yeah. When I worked on teleyachts, we had the same charter guests for the same periods of time every year. Like they had some of their stuff in the bilges.
They were coming back.
We knew they were coming back. It's fine. And we had a great time with them every year because we knew them, and you build that relationship up with them.
So, now, if you were an owner of a boat and you can't give too much away, just in case if you don't need to answer it. Where would you be going? Where would you be setting yourself up, and what would you be doing differently?
I think I would do, I think I just mentioned it, the east coast of Africa.
You'd go there.
Beautiful. No one goes there, and it's stunning. I do like see it for all that I do a lot of work in polar. I love a warm water. If I was a mermaid, I'd be Indian Ocean Pacific. That's it. I would never be going anywhere else.
No way. No
I
way.
just go, okay. But I think, I mean, you could spend years cruising the Pacific and Southeast Asia and have a different experience all the time. There's festivals I'd love to see. And having just gone off about warm water and how great it is, one day when politics dies down a bit, I'd love to go to Kamchatka,
Okay.
which is above Japan. It's a
Right.
string of islands. They have bears. They have incredible heli skiing, beautiful scenery. Again, I'm a sucker for the wilderness.
I feel like you must, like you did mention it. I bet your bucket list is ridiculous.
It's genuinely, it's concerning.
It's getting out of hand.
It's concerning. A colleague of mine was in Kazakhstan at the beginning of this year, and I think I was faintly green for the entire 2 weeks she was there. I was just like, I'm so jealous, so jealous. And it's not the sort of place. So I get planning my own travel, I get a little bit overwhelmed. I have to be,
Oh,
whoever I'm
100%. When it's
traveling
someone
with has to
else,
be
it's
very strict
fine.
with me. They have to give me strong parameters. Otherwise, I get completely overwhelmed with where could I go? I could go all these places, and
Yeah.
everything feels possible. So everything is possible.
I think that's what yachting does to us. I mean, I have always struggled with that. Always,
Yeah.
I have ideas just because creative, just because went and did yachting, and it's like, well, if I'm not doing that today, then what am I doing?
It teaches you that mindset of like, well, let's figure out how. Okay, so this is the dream. How are we going to do it? And how,
Oh no, I started before I thought about any of that, and then just set off, and I just hope that it worked.
I'm very much a pre-planner. I like to have everything in a line and then just go.
Zap,
But
attack.
yeah, but you have to start with the big crazy idea. You have to start with what's that moment that you want of what does success at this, how is that defined? Where do we go from there? And then we work backwards to figure out
Yeah, how do we get there now?
how do we get there now?
So big crazy dreams leads us on to what is happening this year, or you're mentioning 18 months of planning. What big things that you can talk about? Obviously, we have some very confidential things going on at JORO, but what have we got going on?
It's been announced in the press, but obviously JORO are working with Burgess and Revotion, which for me is a career highlight. I've been aware of them since they announced the build, and yeah, followed them. So it was to be involved, even just to be in the room for pitching for that, or be there and designing our ideas to see when working with Burgess on it, and working on those itineraries.
And how much work went into that, Elise?
Lots, and there's lots more to come.
The face, so much. Lots.
But it genuinely fills me with it's so enthusing to be involved in a project like that, and everyone involved in the project is incredibly inspiring. The CEO, the sub-ops people, the scientists that we're talking to are extraordinary individuals just by themselves. So even if I wasn't working on the project and I was just talking to them, I'd just be like, wow. And I actually we get to work with these people. It's really special. So that's definitely a career highlight for me. And then kind of on the smaller scales, because nothing's as large, we're doing some really beautiful honeymoons this year, which are really special. We've done some weddings and events and things, which is really special, and birthdays and celebrations and things like that. And then I'm working on a very cool Scotland itinerary at the moment for some people. And no day is the same. It's it's really interesting. And because we don't necessarily have a specialist at JORO, we don't work in the same way as other companies do, where they have like one person that just does Africa or one person that just does this. We work together with the client, and it'll be different people because you do end up knowing more about, but we try and cross train as much as possible. So I'm still working on my shore-based knowledge now. I've been a yacht specialist for many years, but there's always new things to learn. And one of the things I'm really excited to work on is some projects in Central America and Brazil, land-based fully, for a yacht. But it's there's always new things to learn. Usually my latest obsession is like the thing I'm currently working on, and then I get really obsessive about it.
Hyper fixated on it.
Yeah.
I like that.
My colleague, one of my colleagues is working on this really cool trip in British Columbia that just sounds so epic. Every time I see it, I'm like, I talk to him. I'm like, what are you
Are
doing?
you sure you don't need help on that one?
What's happening there? Like, but we make sure we work in like 2s and 3s, and our founders are involved in every single project, Duncan and Henry. So there's always a conversation about it, that no one's doing anything in isolation, which is really cool. It's as close to being in a crew as I've ever been since leaving Yachting. It's got that same mindset of, you're not a team, it's a crew.
It's a crew.
There's a subtle difference that, again, only yachties. Gosh, yeah. And we're traveling a lot. We're, like I said, went to see this new property in Italy, which is so beautiful recently. Going.
Well, you have to say, like, this was just not given to you overnight, Elise. You have worked at this and grafted to this point. So whatever your bucket list might be is so well deserved, and it's been an absolute. I feel like we could just talk for hours about this. I feel so genuinely excited for you. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast and being a part of this. Yeah, I just hope that one day we get to bump into each other at some point. I don't know if you're doing yacht shows this year or where you are.
Yes, definitely. I'll be at Monaco.
So I'd like to thank Elise once again for coming on the Yachting Brief. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing about all her adventures and what's to come at JORO. And I will leave all her details below so you can get in touch. And if you want to get in touch with me to be on an episode of the Yachting Brief, message me at hello@studiovoyage.co.uk. Thank you so much, Elise.
Thank you. Appreciate it.